Are you paying attention to what's happening in this moment? Or have you been carried away by thought? Beyond the sound of the cat scratching and the sounds of traffic in the distant background, can you hear the dog barking down the street? Can you hear your own breathing? Can you hear your own heart beating? Can you hear the minor adjustments people make in the room? Can you hear others breathing? Can you feel the crispness of the air every inhale, and how it's ever so slightly warmer on the exhale? Do you notice the pressure of the ground beneath you? What is it you smell? Does it smell like food? Does it smell like aromatherapy? Does it smell like candle wax? Does it smell like laundry detergent on your clothes? Does it smell like detergent from the kitchen? Does it smell like perfume, yours or someone else's? What flavor do you have in your mouth? Is it sweet or salty? Creamy or dry? What do you see in this vast, dark space? Are there flickers of color? What else is present in this eternal, timeless, boundless realm? Are there sensations? Emotions? Is there any tension present? What would happen if you just relaxed a little bit more right now? Tension arises when we resist something. We're trying to change something. We either don't want something to be the way it is, or we want something to be the way it's currently not. All of which rests in thought. What's wrong with this moment? Without thinking about it. What is there to change without a thought? The thoughts that arise, can we even claim them as our own? Who is the me to be having thoughts? In this boundless, eternal space? Where do we find this me? So if we cannot find this me, and yet thoughts are still occurring, emotions are still occurring, sounds, tastes, smells, textures. What is it that is aware of all of this? Can we even pinpoint where this awareness comes from? Is it even something solid? Or is it somehow everywhere, in everything, as everything? As the air, as space itself, a pure intelligence awareness that just permeates everything, boundlessly, eternally. Does this awareness have any judgment? Is there any better or worse in its universe? Is there any, I want this and I don't want that? Is there any such thing as fear or hatred or guilt or anger? And yet when any of these arise, does it try to shut them down or transform them? They are just clouds passing across the infinite sky. Does the sky ever try to shut down the clouds? Why would it need to? It can simply watch the clouds and appreciate their beauty. Can we? Can we observe thoughts, emotions, experiences, people, events, and simply see their beauty without attempting to change anything about them? Trying to change what is an addiction. There are many forms of addictions. There's the obvious ones, like alcohol and drugs and caffeine, nicotine, sugar, sex. Then there's things like avoidance, like needing to be right, like addiction to thoughts and thinking. like addiction to particular emotions. Addiction to sadness and grief and loss often manifests as depression. Addiction to anger often asserts itself as violence, aggressive behaviors, even passive-aggressive behaviors. Addiction to fear quite often shows as anxiety. Addiction to foods and overeating, obesity. So the question is, what underlies addictions? All forms of addiction are a self-identification mechanism. I know who I am when I feel sad. I know who I am in this story of myself. I feel good when I eat these foods. I drown out the things I don't like about myself in the bottle. I forget the things I don't want to remember with these drugs. Waking up initially means facing all of who we are, including the things we don't want to see. It means letting go of all of our addictions, not just some of them. And in the end, it requires that we let go of our addictions to self. Everything that we use to define who we are. Age, religion, race, body, habits, history, goals, future, name, occupation, thoughts, emotions. Does this mean that emotions never happen? Of course not. Emotions will still arise. All of them, not just some of them. Even though we live in the space of unconditional love and eternal peace, that doesn't mean we never experience fear and anger and aggression from time to time. What it means is that there's no story attached, so it can be relinquished in moments instead of held on to for days or weeks or months or years. What happens instead is that we have no need to identify ourselves. So we no longer need to hold these emotions as a self-identification mechanism. I have depression. I am an alcoholic. I have celiac disease. I am a naturopath. I am an eternal being who currently practices naturopathy in this form. So the question is, what are you addicted to? What judgments? What thoughts? What values? What beliefs? What emotions? What story? What self-definition? What state? What goals? What opinions? What experiences? There may be some that are quite gross and overt. These are the easiest to identify and quite often the easiest to release. The deeper we delve, the more subtle the addictions become. Perhaps there's just one tiny part hidden somewhere inside that has an opinion so firmly held on something that it has to be right. Someone comes along and challenges it with a differing opinion. Up go the shackles. We enter into an argument, defend our position. What for? In this infinite, boundless, eternal space, is there any such thing as right and wrong? If one cloud is white and the other one is grey, does that make one right and one wrong? One better and one worse? If one is small and one is large, if one is shaped this way and the other that way, does it matter? The sky sees all clouds as beautiful. The infinite being experiences itself in all forms as beautiful and infinite, including differing opinions, and including the beings who think they are the owners of those opinions. In the end, we will find, perhaps inevitably, that the three most persistent addictions are the need to know, the need to be right, and the need to control. So can we get to those as quickly as possible? Can we cut through all the thoughts and the emotions, the experiences, the states, the goals, the history, the story, the self-identification mechanisms? Can we cut straight to the chase? What is it we think we need to know? Who is it that thinks they need to know? What is there to know? We are everything in the universe. There is only one infinite being, one infinite knowledge, one infinite wisdom, one infinite intelligence, one infinite awareness. We can never be other than what we are. We are always inherently that knowledge and wisdom. Always. The eternal presence, the intelligence awareness. This me that thinks it needs to know something. This is the illusion. This me that grasps at concepts, thoughts, language, ideas, ideals. This is the illusion. We seek knowledge as an intellectual pursuit. The mind wants to know. The heart already knows everything. It is nothing but knowledge. Can we let go of our pursuit of knowledge? Can we approach every single moment with the reckless abandon of I don't know? I don't know. I don't know. I don't need to know. Where knowledge is an intellectual thing, I don't need to know with my mind. Because the heart already knows. The need to be right only ever arises when we have our grasp quite firmly attached to a particular perspective or judgment. Even more so if within that perspective we have some concept of the me. Who I am hinges on this perspective. I am a nutritionist. My perspective on health and well-being is right. Someone comes along with a differing perspective. What would it mean if my perspective were not right? What would it mean about me? What if we were to approach every single thought, everyone, as if it were wrong? What if the I am this age, and I am this gender, and I am this set of likes and dislikes? What if none of those were true? What if our opinions, humanity should do this, this shouldn't be happening, we should have a different political leader, we shouldn't go to war, we should be looking to greener alternatives to coal mining? We should be following this diet and not that one. We should be pursuing enlightenment. What if all of these are wrong too? We trip ourselves up by believing our thoughts. If only we were to believe none of them. I dare say, awakening would simply spontaneously occur. And so we end up, of course, with the need to control. We think we are an individual, separate to everything else, separate to that which we are trying to control. Life, health, love, success, wealth, politics, economics, environment. So the deepest and most profound question, what if this were wrong too? What if we were not separate from that which we seek to control? And what would that mean about control? If we are the environment, we are wealth, we are love, we are politics and economics, success, fame, health. If we are these, who is there to control? And what is there to control? If there is only one, is there any such thing as control? We only ever try to control what happens in our lives when we perceive ourselves to be separate. The need to control is based on the belief that there's something wrong with what is. So what if we ceased to believe that thought? What if there's absolutely nothing wrong with this moment? Nothing, not even a hint of a thing. Not even if we just had a different politician, things would be different. Yeah, they'd be different. Sure. We'd have a white cloud instead of a grey one. So what? What does it matter? We are the infinite being. We are the political powers. We are the decisions being made in this country and in others. And this is the play for this moment. In the next, who knows? Who needs to know? If it changes, we see what happens. If it doesn't change, we see what happens. Our mind likes to get caught up in the game of placing judgments and values. What happens if we believe none of them?
I'm writing a zine at the moment, and it's about food ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what I'm writing about is accepting uncertainty and accepting paradoxes, because we try and divide things into dichotomies or polarities or dualities. And for example, veganism, because I talk a bit about veganism, strangely enough.
Never would have expected that.
No, you wouldn't expect it. It does come up, it does pop up from time to time.
Unbeknownst to you, of course.
That's right, yeah. And there are paradoxical reasons why I'm vegan. And it's important because, one of the reasons is because perhaps that is the evolution of humanity. As humanity evolves and it becomes more in tune and more understanding of the sentience of animals, and increases knowledge of nutrition as that can avoid eating animal products, perhaps that is the role of humanity, to become vegan. But perhaps it's not. Perhaps another reason why I'm vegan is so that those people who can't be vegan for some reason or another, can do so without having to eat factory farmed animals. So that those people who have to eat meat have better quality meat, for example, or perhaps it's the role for people only in industrialised society to be vegan, but hunter-gatherer people who work on the land and whatever. So there are lots and lots of reasons for being vegan, and some of them completely contradict each other. But I can connect with a number of discourses, and I think one of the problems in food ethics, and people get locked into different positions, like I am vegan for this reason and this is the only reason, become logged into a dogma which creates conflict. So accepting paradoxical reasons for having a particular position, and accepting the fact that ethics can be fluid depending upon different circumstances, and being comfortable with that.
Ethics are a value judgment.
Sorry?
Ethics are a value judgment, which automatically places it in the domain of the mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And reasons for anything are also the domain of the mind. So while I appreciate your exploration of all the different reasons that one may or may not choose to be vegan, ultimately all of those are, for a less crude perhaps way of putting it, are part of ego.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of looking at the reasons why one should or shouldn't consider veganism, perhaps the simplest way of approaching any dichotomy, nutrition is such a broad spectrum, right? Is that you face dichotomies everywhere in nutritional understanding, but if we come at it through unity and compassion, the answer is far clearer than the mind's answer will ever be. If we were still hunters and gatherers, instead of walking into the supermarket and seeing a polystyrene plastic wrap little tray of something that doesn't even resemble the animal it once was, if we had to go out there and come face to face with the animal live and take its life and gut it and chop off its head and skin it and cook it and then carve it into pieces, could we actually do that? And while there will always be some who say, absolutely, I could do that, I would hazard a guess that probably 95% of the population who are truly in touch with heart and spirit, in that moment, face to face with another living being, couldn't do it. Compassion wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, on some level, I agree with you that humanity is moving towards a more conscious way of living, and part of that is coming in touch with compassion, right? And it would seem to be a natural evolution that compassion says, I won't take another's life for a meal that I could otherwise have without taking a life. And there's no reason behind that, right? It's just compassion saying, I don't want to kill. That's all. I respect life. I love life. I want peace. I won't cause another one suffering. And when we truly see with unity, when we're seeing from the eyes of unity, we look into the eyes of another being and see God. We are that. All of us, everything is that. Even the inanimate things are that. How can you harm something when you truly recognize its divinity? So it would seem like the natural conclusion that as we move more and more towards compassion and unity consciousness, that would seem to be a natural conclusion.
Yeah.
Without the mind getting in there and saying because of this and that and the other.
That's right. Yeah, for sure.
And the mind likes to justify. It's got all sorts of reasons. That's what it does.
It does, yeah.
When we sit in the moment, when we sit with what is long enough that the mind starts to thin, the confusion falls away. And the Tao, as some put it, the path, the way, is always clear. Is that we muddy it with our mental activity more often than not.
So what's the difference between someone that's a human being that sees something through compassion and a sentient animal like a lion that will hunt down a deer or a buffalo or a bison and tear it to bits and have it and eat it?
Well, first of all, consider they're built completely differently to us, right? For the most part, we are considered to be omnivores. They're carnivores. They're not built to eat vegetables. They're not built to rip leaves off trees and chew the way giraffes and pandas do. Right? So their whole physiology, their whole anatomy is completely different to ours. And therefore, their gut instinct and all their primal urges are different to ours. We could quite happily fill a plate with fruits and vegetables and herbs. A carnivore wouldn't be drawn to that at all. Wouldn't even entertain it as a possibility. They're not wired for it.
Is that the question you would?
No. So who makes that call that they are wired for it and we're not wired for it?
Who is there if there's only one?
There's nothing wrong in eating meat.
There's nothing wrong in anything. There's just as there's nothing right in anything, right? Only thinking makes it so. So the question would seem to arise on the heels of that would be, what happens if we got a lion that suddenly went, oh my God, it's wrong that I'm killing antelope. Oh my God, it's wrong that I'm hunting for my meal. What am I going to do now? Maybe I'll do as the giraffes do. What a dilemma. Imagine being built to be a carnivore and having this pang of consciousness say, oh my gosh, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, right.
Only thinking makes it so. There is nothing right or wrong.
So I mustn't feel guilty eating meat.
Guilt will arise when we're not being congruous to what our heart is saying. I'm not sure if you've heard guilt is a judgment of self and resentment is a judgment of others. So it means that head and heart are in discordance. When I say heart, I don't mean emotional heart, I mean spirit, right? Spirit is saying, this feels true. And head is saying, oh, I've done something I shouldn't be doing, right? So in this example, spirit is saying, I shouldn't really be eating animals. I love animals, I love life, I love peace, I love unity, I love compassion. That's the essence of spirit. Head is saying, but I really enjoy meat. So then one eats meat and then says, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. It's the discordance that brings up the guilt.
So how do you stop that discord?
Either slay spirit or stop eating meat.
do you, outside of this conversation, do you feel guilty about eating meat, or is it just because we're talking about it now?
No, I've been more conscious about it lately.
Right.
And I probably don't feel guilty, but I just think about it, that I'm eating another living creature. I mean, plants are living creatures too.
Yeah.
So from the vegan's point of view.
Most plants don't die when you take the edible portion of them, though.
But I think there's different levels of sentience, obviously. I mean, it is, in the same way that, well, I mean, if you would rescue, if your house was on fire and there was a pot plant in the window and a dog, you'd rescue the dog before the pot plant. Because you instinctively know that the dog is more sentient and more...
Or it could be that you've got more of an attachment or an emotional connection, or I mean, there's other reasons you could reach.
For sure. But,
I mean,
but don't I don't want to make you feel guilty for eating meat. So.
I just feel that if an animal has been killed, right, and if it's been killed for the sole purpose of consumption, rather than a sport or a trophy, then I shouldn't feel guilty.
How is it any different?
Because then it's wastage.
It's wastage anyway. It's a life. It's a life that's been taken. And the step beyond that is what happened prior to the life being taken. Was that animal raised specifically so that its life would be donated to somebody's dinner plate? In which case you're talking about farming animals for slaughter, in which case we're now creating environmental pollution for the sake of what goes on the plate. Right?
That's why I asked, what's the difference between a lion having a buck? What if there were no more buffaloes left? We have no more lions.
We'd have a completely different balance.
See, a lion killing a buffalo is part of a natural balance, whereas the animals that we eat, unless you're a hunter-gatherer, you are having an impact on the environment largely because with our high populations you have to have factory farming, industrialized farming. So for example, sheep are lambed twice a year now instead of once, where they normally should be lambed once a year. So in the winter you get a lot of baby lambs dying because they're pushing the boundaries. So animals are suffering more. In one discourse is to say that animals suffer more if they're being farmed for humans because of the industrialization of the system. So it's not part of the balance of a lion taking a buffalo. These are animals that are factory farmed and have to be marched off to abattoirs and go through the process of being put onto trucks and traumatized and walked up. You could make an argument that it's more humane to shoot a kangaroo in the wild that doesn't have a baby in its pouch very quickly. But even then, you can't feed 23 million Australians on kangaroo. There aren't enough kangaroos to go round. So there are lots of ethics about meat. It's not just a simple matter of whether or not, you can compare yourself to a lion. It's a lot more complex than that. The ethics, sorry, it's all going into mind here. I'm going completely into mind, but we'll go back to your stuff in a minute.
So it's more to do with balance and universe balancing things out.
The universe will always find its way to balance. It just might not look the way we humans think balance should look.
It will balance out eventually, yeah.
I mean, just hypothetically, say the entire 8 billion people that inhabit this earth turn vegan. Would the earth still be able to sustain 8 billion people?
Not necessarily. It's a bit more complicated than that as well. It would help in many ways, but if 8 billion people all wanted soy cheese shipped in from America, which is the latest brand, and it's
to be honest, it's all hypothetical. We'll never know. It's just the mind imagining. We'll never know unless it actually happens. In which case, different industries will pop up, right? Because the livestock and agriculture and dairy and all those other industries would shut down, right? But then we'll have new industries pop up to support different lifestyle and dietary choices. So we can't ever possibly know until that moment arises.
But there is a lot of scientific evidence to show that if the world went mainly vegan, then
less land areas,
there would be the environment would benefit greatly. And ideally, the people who can afford to be vegan, the people who have privilege like us, who can live in a society where we can choose vegan food, you could make an argument that there is more of a reason for us to go vegan because we can, whereas other people in other cultures don't have the luxury of making that choice. They have to eat meat. And so maybe people would like us who can make a difference by going vegan perhaps have more of a responsibility so that we can reduce the demand for meat on the planet, reduce the need for factory farming and industrialization of farming for animals, and create a better balance. Because as you say, everything does balance out eventually, but by 2040, some scientists are saying the human race will be extinct. So part of the balancing out might be the extinction of the human race and the Earth going back to plankton for 10 million years while it repairs itself and something else evolves and comes along. And if you're comfortable with that, that's fine in the bigger picture. But
it's all still imagination, though.
But it's also
we're projecting into the future something that we can't possibly ever know until it happens.
Yeah.
And there's possibly estimates that are closer to the truth than others, right? There could be some completely missing the mark, but the essence is we'll never really know until it happens. So, and I think we've slid off topic a little there because your question was, what do I do if the guilt arises eating meat, right? That's all right. Yes. Come back to spirit in that moment, right? There's a lot of mind stuff going on. I should be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that. Society says this, nutrition says that, politics says this, money says something else, right? It's quite expensive to support a meat habit. For someone who's got that money, that's not necessarily even going to enter into the equation. For people who can't afford to eat meat, I know families who eat meat once a week because they can't afford to have it every day. Right?
I've lessened the guilt by not stopping consumption of beef and pork. So limited my meat consumption to fish and chicken. So in a way, the guilt has lessened, but nonetheless it's still there.
So when you feel the guilt, what's the thought pattern that surrounds it?
That how was the chicken killed? Was it done in a humane way? Or was it, there's nothing humane about killing. But was it done in a
there are still degrees though, right? There's more humane and less humane.
No, it was done in a brutal, painful way, or was it done painlessly?
I've visited free range and battery chicken farms, so just at some point I can let you know what it's like. But
I mean, they claim halal chicken is non-brutal.
It's
the description sounds.
But that's the thing.
brutal.
So what do you believe? What do you
Well, what's
accept?
meant to happen for halal foods is a very quick slice to the throat.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a very quick, painless death, in theory.
But
But
does it really happen?
for legal labelling, it has to happen. The question is, though, even chickens are sentient beings, right? In the moments before their slaughter, what do they live through? Right? Even if the instant of the death might be quick and painless, but it could be 10 minutes or 2 hours beforehand that they're aware of what's coming. It's like the cows when they're lined up for the abattoir, they have every inclination. They're very intelligent animals. They know what's coming. So the trauma may not necessarily be the moment of death. It may be leading up to that moment. And we will never know unless we do it ourselves. We'll never know. It's one of the most common arguments I see a lot around veganism is if you could do it to a chicken, why couldn't you do it to a dog or a cat? Right? In this country, we think of dogs and cats as pets. We connect with them.
We get outraged,
Yeah, think about China, for instance. They eat dogs and cats. They think of it as another animal for the dinner plate.
They eat anything. Anything that moves.
I've heard that. Guy from China.
Oh, anything that moves, they'll kill it and fry it and eat.
But the question here isn't should you go vegan or shouldn't you, really. It's how well can you tune into spirit and follow that. Because we're all aware of it, even when we think we're not. That tiny little intuition, whether it comes through as a feeling or a gut response or a thought. However it comes, it always comes. So you'll never hear from me whether you should or shouldn't go vegan. Because that's entirely opinion, that's ego speaking. Right? It's a mind-based values judgment.
Yeah, I don't tell people anymore whether they should or shouldn't go vegan. I just talk about some of the issues that people might want to think about, which is probably still
In the end,
coming
it's not necessarily, right?
No.
It's just saying, have a look at this, consider that. I mean, I watched an 1.5 hour long video on some guy completely espousing veganism, and he was so hardcore selling the concept to people that I went, gosh, even I'm put off by this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
It creates an equal and opposite reaction.
Well, people like to buy, not to be sold to, is the old cliche in sales, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for everything. If you're selling me a concept and you're shoving it down my throat, I'm likely to say no thanks.
Yeah, that's right.
People hate being told what to do.
Sure.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. It's different if you're tuning in, though. If you're tuning into that, whatever that gut instinct is that's saying something, whether it shows up in the form of guilt or something else. That's the thought about the chicken. Nobody can tell you to follow that. It will become... it will simply become the thing to do. The more the mind thins and ego falls away.
That. I mean, the same feelings and thoughts that got me to stop eating beef and pork will probably get me to stop eating chicken and fish at some point in time. I mean, I feel I'm moving closer to that.
Can I make a suggestion there, David? Instead of following the thoughts, follow the feeling. Is when it's that feeling of compassion and unity, that spirit.
The thoughts come after the feeling. That's where, I mean, I don't let the feelings come after the thoughts. I feel first and then I think, yes.
So the mind's just going into story, and it likes to do that.
As with me is, I follow my heart and I take my mind with it.
Usually we follow the heart and then use the mind to justify the decision.
So true.
Either way, right? Whether we choose to stay
No, I
eating
never
meat
let my
or
mind
otherwise.
control things. Unless it's mathematics, so. But now I always go with my heart.
Yeah.
And I take the mind with it.
And I think when the heart truly wraps itself around something, there's no confusion there. I know that the choice for me personally to turn vegan, it happened within 24 hours.
Quickly, I don't know if I've got time. Touching on opinions. I mean, you noticed in the last 2 days or 3 days the debate that went on.
Mm-hmm.
My comments were based on showing love and compassion. It may have come across as you don't know what you're talking about, or that's your opinion. No. For me, it didn't matter what X, Y, or Z thought. I was just trying to bring them back to, or bring them to the realization of looking at everything with love and compassion.
Mm.
It didn't matter what opinion they had, whether they were, black, white, gray, blue. It didn't matter what color they were picking.
Yeah.
And I was to bring them to drawing them to the focus of love, kindness, and compassion.
Sure.
Look at it, and then you will see things differently.
Two pitfalls.
All that becomes secondary. All that becomes...
Sure. Two pitfalls, though. First is text, obviously, is missing the tonality and the body language, and it can be misunderstood.
It gets interpreted badly.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
People looking at it and stew over it.
And I mean, what you read on the thread is what you read. I mean, I got private messages left, right, and center. And I said, no, that's not what I meant.
Did you get into a Facebook kerfuffle?
Yeah.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
It got ridiculous to the end.
Well, the second pitfall, David, is that sometimes it pays to recognize where the other person is at before trying to bring them into that space of love and peace and unity. Because there are some people that are not ready to do that.
I realized, and that's why I deleted that whole thread, because I knew it had lost direction.
Yes.
It started off with something and it ended up with something else.
Let me just finish with a little analogy. A couple of years ago, my uncle in the same year had prostate cancer and shingles, and it nearly killed him. And sitting around the formal dining table at my parents' house over a birthday dinner for one of our family members, we got into a discussion on chemotherapy and radiation treatment. And my family, generally speaking, being very GP oriented, shall we say, it was a little bit of a dangerous turf for me to be making suggestions that were contrary to chemo and radiation. Being naturally the kind of person who likes to open people's minds to possibilities, I wasn't intending to change anybody's mind. I was trying to open the door just a sliver so that a toe could get in. And so my mother, being quite boxed in her thinking that the chemo and the radiation was the only way to go, it naturally came to pass that the conversation seemed to be with my mother about how to open that door to other possibilities. There comes a time in every conversation where you realize that it's not working. And it was, for the case in point, it was too late. My uncle had already undertaken the chemotherapy and the radiation treatment, so it wasn't a question for him. The question for me was, if at some stage in the next 20 or 30 years of my mother's life, should she, touch wood, come in contact with any cancers, if there's just that toe in the door that says, what if there's something else possible? What if there's something healthier available than chemo and radiation? Would that be enough that in the back of her mind she might not instantly go down the track of the chemo? And I'm not sure I got the door open that crack, but I knew I would never convince her to completely change her mind. That was never the intention. So my invitation to you is, when you're faced with people who are in their little box of reality, whatever that looks like in that conversation, perhaps instead of trying to completely open the box, all you're trying to do is just let a tiny crack of light in so that they go, oh, I wonder what's on the outside of that.
That's why I was a little bit disappointed when he didn't take me up on the offer of
But does he have to, right?
of discussing vaccination against non-vaccination.
Oh, is that what it was about?
No.
Oh, I was about to say
that's
such a. Oh, I see so many.
The original debate was about racism.
About racism,
yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And then Lilaeia came and said, everyone's opinion is based on the assumption that they're right, or the need to be right. And then Mike said, "Oh, next week's debate, is it going to be
to vaccinate or not to vaccinate?"
Because that's always such a controversial
in the media, and I'm clueless, really. I don't know nothing about. So I see it'd be a good topic of discussion as long as it's done in a.
No. Not on Facebook. Vaccination on every vaccination debate I've seen on Facebook has ended in just control. It's broken friendships. It's never. It has to be a face-to-face conversation, I think.
And even face-to-face, you risk that it's not actually an open-minded exploration of opinions. It becomes a very egotistical debate of my way's right. No, my way's right.
No, if you've got a convincing argument, I have no problems with that. I don't. I have heard lots about the benefits of not vaccinating. To me, why it doesn't make sense at this point in time is one, I don't know enough about the drawbacks of vaccination. Why it doesn't make sense to me also is I was inoculated and vaccinated from the day I was born. I don't think it's done damage to me. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. I don't know. I feel that I'm reasonably good health. So I cannot accept at this point in time that non-vaccination is beneficial for any newborn child or kid.
It's a complex issue.
And that's why I was interested in getting to that debate and that conversation, is to learn more about what's going on. Has vaccination changed? Is it not intended to do what it's meant to do? What's changed?
And it's an enormous contentious issue.
Yeah, and I'm still keen and eager to learn.
Sure, and you'll get all manner of opinions on it. And they're all opinions. In the end, you have to go with your gut.
again, it's very polarized. They've created this debate is you're either pro-vaccination, that means you just don't worry about big pharma, they've got it all tied up. People who normally are very critical of things like big pharma, always questioning, say we're pro-vaccination, we're not going to question big pharma and what they're doing. I think it's great, or you're with us or you're against us. It's been very polarized, the debate. And it's possible, from my perspective, that there's actually a middle ground here, that maybe vaccination can be a good thing, but are they doing a good job? Are big pharma doing the right thing? Are they cutting feelings?
But
you're still getting into mind stuff though.
It is
with
all very
of that.
mindy.
My gut feeling, and
I recognise
this is my gut feeling is I think vaccination is not for everyone, but there are cases where yes, a child needs vaccination. Every case, if you look at it on an individual basis, is different. I feel you cannot generalize and say every kid needs vaccination. And that's my gut feeling.
It's all just the world of opinions then, isn't it? So just to finish off that suggestion of, inviting somebody to open their world of finite possibilities, just that little sliver, doesn't necessarily mean that they have to take it, does it? Right? I can invite my mum to consider possibilities other than chemotherapy, and when the day comes, should the day come, that she's faced with that choice, if she takes the chemo path, that's entirely her choice. And if she comes back to me and she says, Lilaeia, what were you saying about something natural for cancer? Okay.
I know it's a very diverse.
All you can do is offer. And I'm not just talking about health here, it's with anything. When you offer to help open up somebody's paradigm just that little bit, just open up to a possibility of something else, it's releasing the attachment that they follow that.
The problem is, see, a lot of people take it personally when they think it's a personal attack because you don't agree with their point of view. And that's where, I was so disgusted with the way that debate turned out, with the name calling and the use of language. And I ended up, writing to the person and telling that person, there's no need for it. You cannot make your argument any stronger or better by profanity, by using profanity. So really.
But then if you can see through the eyes of compassion in that moment, that even though it looks like an unjustified response, where must that person be to be thinking from that space and to need to write such profane?
And I did, because she said, oh, if you're not happy, you can delete me. I said, I don't want to delete you.
It's not about that, David. You're not quite following me, right? Put yourself in their shoes. That's compassion, right? Compassion says, wow, that looked a little bit out of context. Where must that person be to feel the need to say such a thing? And quite often you end up feeling sorry for that person rather than angry with them.
No, I didn't get angry with her. I did. The conversation I had offline was totally compassionate, and I told her this, and I said, I wish you could stop focusing on I hate this and I hate that and I hate that, instead of looking at the things that you love. Because right now you are picking things that you hate. Mm-hmm. So your whole life is revolving around and vibrating around this whole concept of hate. Mm-hmm. Look at things that you like and you love, and you will change your vibration, and you will start to,
Yes, and vibration is another topic of conversation. I actually thought we were going to talk about vibration tonight, but it'll be another night. What you've missed is the first two words in that statement. I wish. Automatically, that's ego placing a value judgment that to focus on what you love is better than focusing on what you hate. In the non-dual world, there's no preference. Right? If they're focusing on hate, then they're focusing on hate. That's just where they're at. If you offer them a hand, if you try to open that door just a sliver and they don't want to take it, leave them sitting in that room with the door locked. If that's where they want to be for now, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's where I feel like, I mean, if that's me, I wouldn't want anyone to let go. If I'm drowning, I want someone to grab me and hold on and that's.
Others think differently.
Probably.
It's about recognizing who wants.
Doesn't want to lose that definition or something.
It's about recognizing who wants to be opened up to new possibilities and who doesn't in that moment. And that doesn't mean you give up forever. It just means that in that moment, you allow them to be where they want to be. Maybe next week or next month or next year, you say you're ready to come out of that room now. Shall I unlock the door for you?
I deleted one person because he passed away while which was not.
Because he passed away?
No, he passed away rude and vulgar.
Oh,
I thought you said he passed away, not he rather than commented.
He passed away on my friends list. But, no, I mean, people messaging me and saying, what's wrong with this person? I said, no, you don't understand. We don't know what she's going through. Don't judge till you know where she's coming from or where she's at, what's going on in her. We're not living her life. We don't know what's going on. There's probably a good reason for her to be saying what she's saying, the way she's saying.
It's the ability to just let the whole thing go.
Yeah. And
It's
then
the
one
key to
person
everything.
said, there's no intelligence in this debate anymore. It's just mudslinging.
It's about ego. It just becomes about ego, doesn't it? Cognitive dissonance.
And that's when I decided, that's it, I'm deleting the whole thing. No point.
It so often happens, it becomes a question of egos.
I mean,
And in some ways that's a real test, right? Because if you can just sit there and watch people slinging things at each other and go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's a bit rude. Ouch. Right? And not care, right?
I get shit slung at me all the time at Facebook, and I generally don't care. And I've reached the stage now I don't care. I don't care. And I don't delete people who sling shit at me either. It's just come to the territory because I try to open the door a bit. And I know that the price you pay of opening the door a bit, or trying to open the door a bit, is that you'll get stuff thrown at me, and that's what comes to the territory. And
People generally don't like being pushed outside their comfort zone.
No.
I realize that from that debate.
That doesn't mean stop, right? It just means if people are determined to stay bogged where they are, let them be.
And also be prepared for the fact that you're probably going to get shit slung.
You get shit done at you too. You had a
I
guy
don't
storm off your
care.
committee,
I
didn't
don't
you?
care. I mean,
Of course,
I got called a lot of names in that thread, and it didn't bother me.
No.
It's water off duck's back as far as I'm concerned. Just because you call me a fucked doesn't make me a fucked.
It's still not nice though.
I know it's not nice,
Yeah,
but I mean, it's
That's
just.
and you can
Am I
acknowledge
going
that.
to lose sleep over it?
No.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna waste a single
No.
bit of energy stressing out what somebody called me a fucked.
I mean, part of participating in debates and the part of trying to open people's doors and ways of thinking is it becomes a bit of back in your face. Just it's part of.
Some people are just not ready for it.
No, that's right.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.